This is Flow Rates Lecture Video 3, and I am still on page 486, and I am going to pick right back up with practice problems. I believe this is practice problems B, number 5. And so number 5 reads that a physician orders 150 milliliters of D5 normal saline to be infused in 40 minutes. The drip rate, or the drip factor, that's a big difference. The drip factor is 15 drops per milliliter. The question in detail is asking how many drops per minute would be infused. So they're basically asking you to find the drip rate. And the drip rate is drops per minute. In order to find your drops per minute, remember you have to take the total amount of milliliters over your total amount of minutes, and you multiply it by your drop factor. And remember, your drop factor has the units of drops per milliliter. Sometimes your problem gives you your drop factor, sometimes it does not. So let's go ahead and see if we can solve this problem. So my total amount of milliliters happens to be 150 milliliters. All right, over my total amount of minutes has to be 40 minutes. This is based off of what the problem gives. And then we're going to multiply it by the drop factor. In this case, they call it the drip factor, but regardless of the terminology that they use, drop factor, drip factor, remember the drop factor has the drops of, are the units of drops per milliliter. That's how you know that this is what you would need to multiply your flow rate of milliliters per minute in order to change it into drops to find your drip rate. So that means that my drop factor is 15 drops per 1 milliliter. My milliliters cross out, and you are going to multiply across. So 150 times 15, I do believe, is 2250. That's 2250 drops over 40 minutes times 1 happens to be 40 minutes. So my units are in the correct units that I'm looking for, which is drops per minute, because I set my problem up to where my like units cross out, leaving me with the units that I'm looking for. And all you have to do is just divide it out. And so your answer comes out to be 56.25 drops per minute. But remember, with your drip rate, you always round it to the nearest whole number. So your answer is going to be approximately 56 drops per minute. Okay? So we've solved number 5 on page 486. All right, let's do another one. I want you guys to look at number 8. Number 8 on page 487. We're still in the same practice problems, but now we're looking at number 8 on page 487, and it reads that a physician orders Zantac, 50 milligrams in 100 milliliters normal saline. So what that is saying is that you have a 100 milliliter bag of normal saline, and the doctor has asked that you add 50 milligrams of Zantac to that 100 milliliter bag, and they want that to be infused over 15 minutes. All right. It tells us that our drop factor is 15 drops per milliliter. Remember, sometimes your drop factor is given, sometimes it is not. The first question, they want to know how many drops per minute would be infused. So in detail, they want to know, what is the drip rate? What is your drip rate? So in order to find the drip rate, remember, we have to take the total amount of milliliters over the total amount of minutes and multiply it by my drop factor. Remember, your drop factor has the units of what? Drops per milliliter. So if I read over the problem, it tells me that my total amount of milliliters is 100 milliliters and my total amount of minutes is 15 minutes. So I'm going to take 100 milliliters over 15 minutes. All I'm doing is setting my problem up to where my like units cross out, leaving me with the units that I'm looking for. In this case, is drops per minute. So now I'm going to multiply this 100 milliliters per 15 minutes by the drop factor, which was given to me, which is what? 15 drops per 1 milliliter. All right. So as you can see, my milliliters cross out. That leaves me with drops per minute. And if you look at this as well, that 15 crosses out as well, just mathematically. It crosses out just by the way it's set up. I'm just going to solve the problem all together as I've been doing before. So I'm going to multiply 100 times 15, which gives you what? 1,500 drops over 15 minutes times 1 is 15 minutes. All right. And if you divide that out, your answer is approximately 100 drops per minute. All right. All righty. So the next question, B, they want to know how many milligrams of Zantac would the patient receive in 10 minutes. So as I've been saying before, you're going to set your problem up to where your like units cross out, leaving you with what you are looking for. All right. So keep in mind that I'm going to set this problem up as a ratio proportion. Based off of the problem itself, you know that the patient is receiving what? 50 milligrams every 15 minutes, correct? But they want to know how many milligrams are they receiving in 10 minutes. So I'm going to set this problem up as a ratio proportion, and that means that my X is my milligrams, all right? Because I already know that for every 50 milligrams, they're receiving that in 15 minutes. So I need to know how many milligrams are they going to receive in 10 minutes. So with that being said, in order to set the right-hand side of my ratio proportion up, I have to set it up where my units are mirror to mirror. So if it's milligram per minute on the left-hand side, then it needs to be milligram per minute on the right-hand side. But since you're looking for the total amount of milligrams in 10 minutes, then your milligrams will be X and your 10 minutes will be at the bottom. Because remember, I'm setting it up to where my units are mirror of one another. So all you have to do now is you just crisscross multiply. There's really no formula here. You just have to use arithmetic and set your problem up to where your like units cross out. So I'm going to multiply 50 times what? 10. And that gives you 500 milligrams per minute. Correct? Let me try to write it clearly. So that's going to give you 500 milligrams per minute equals x times 15 minutes. You're going to divide 15 minutes on both sides. So if I divide 15 minutes on both sides, 15 minutes crosses out on the right-hand side, leaving you with x. Minutes cross out on the left-hand side, and all you do is just divide 15 into 500. And your answer comes out to be 33.3 milligrams. Well, that makes sense. If they're receiving 50 milligrams in 15 minutes, then that means they need to receive less than 50 milligrams in 10 minutes. So if my answer came out to be more than 50 milligrams, then my answer would have been wrong because they received 50 milligrams in 15 minutes. All right. Alrighty. So far I've done majority of your, most of your practice problems. And practice problems B, I believe. I'm going to pick right back up with some more practice problems that are more towards the end of the chapter. So this will be the end of our lecture video 3. I'll pick back up in lecture video 4.